Hey, a few days ago, I was doing some prep work for an upcoming D&D session, and I started thinking, what makes a good adventure? How do you make an adventure good? Well, first of all, let's define what good is in this context. Good is kind of vague and broad, so let's set a vague and broad baseline. Fun. For the purposes of this video, we'll say a good adventure is one where everyone at the table had fun.
But still noble.
You might be saying.
Fun is also a vague and broad term.
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly the point I'm trying to make with this video. So sit back down, fix your posture, and let's sort this out. Literally everyone is going to have a different idea of what fun is. There's always going to be some overlap with people, but no one will have the exact same taste as anyone else. So what do you do about that? In my opinion, tailor the game to fit your table. Find the right people to play with. Some people like games about political intrigue. Some like immersive roleplay or heavy action. Some people like all of that. Finding the right group of people to play with will always be the first step to having a fun time. As an example, my first D&D group wasn't that great. We were all longtime friends, but not everyone wanted the same thing out of a D&D game, so it kind of just fizzled out. I formed a new group with one person from the old game and 2 new people, and I consider myself very fortunate now because we're all on the same page about the things we like and want from this game. Sometimes, even though you're friends, they don't always make for a group that clicks, and that's okay. You can prepare a meal with the highest quality ingredients, like a beautifully marbled ribeye cooked to a perfect medium rare with some vegetables grown from a local farm with no preservatives or crazy chemicals, and there will still be people that would rather have a McDonald's cheeseburger. If you like good steak, find a group that also likes good steak. If you like cheeseburgers, find a group that likes cheeseburgers. Both are perfectly fine. By the way, I know you don't have to exclusively like one or the other. Personally, I like both. I'm just using those as an easy example.
Okay, still noble.
You might also be saying,
Once you find the right group to play with, how do you make fun happen?
well, in my opinion, you don't. Or you can't? If there was some magic formula for how to always make the perfect adventure, everyone would be doing that every time. And I think it's actually great that something like that doesn't exist because it means that there's more than just one single way for things to be fun in this game. Let me give an example. I'm going to use 2 small adventures, you could almost consider them encounters, as examples for this just because they're more compact and easier to understand without a bunch of context. The absolute best adventure I've run so far was the reverse heist from one of my previous videos. What I think made that one fun was that I planned it loosely and gave the party free rein in the sandbox. But also, when something went sideways for the party, it wasn't an immediate failure. The entire city watch didn't come crashing in at the first sign of trouble. When something went wrong, I gave the party a chance to do something about it. I gave the players chances to act and react to situations using their characters. As I said earlier, fun is kind of vague and broad, but I can promise you that if you give the players opportunities for their characters to do things they're good at, that's fun. That entire session was basically me presenting the party with a problem, and them having to come up with solutions on the fly using their characters. However, as a counterpoint to that, another, again, very small, adventure that my party loved was when one of them snuck out in the middle of the night to meet with an NPC about a secret. But when the player character got there, the NPC had set up an ambush and challenged them to a one-on-one duel. I was worried that since it was just a 1v1 with both sides just rolling dice and clobbering each other, that it would be boring while the other 2 players just sat there and watched out of game since their characters weren't there. But to my surprise, everyone was locked in and hyper-invested. I think I owe the success of that to the fact that it was a complete surprise to the party, and that we heavily narrated each attack to make it feel more dynamic instead of just rock'em sock'em robots. We turned what was just two people swinging swords and rolling dice into something that was way more narrative and engaging just by making each dice roll feel impactful. Both of those adventures were very fun and memorable to us, but they're not at all the same. Make the encounters or situations that you and your party would be excited about, but also don't be afraid to experiment. Sometimes the things you didn't expect to work well end up being the party's favorite.
All right, Still Noble.
You say aggressively.
I get the idea. Fun is subjective, everyone has different taste, blah blah blah. But there's got to be some methods or tips that are universally good and fun, right?
First of all, whoa, okay, put the gun down. Second, yeah, okay, you've twisted my arm. I'll tell you some things that work for me. Just keep in mind that this is advice for coming up with your own setting and homebrew adventures, though I think some of these could still work for published content. I tried to make each NPC feel like a separate character. I don't mean that I give every single NPC a fully fleshed out backstory with a wacky voice, just that I tried to fully put myself in that NPC's shoes and act how I think that character would act during the short time that the party engages with them. To me, that keeps the NPCs from seeming samey and stale to the party because each NPC is like their own person, with their own desires and quirks and motivations. It encourages the player's immersion, and for us, immersion is important. If the game feels like it's real in that moment, then the player's choices and consequences of their actions feel real. The players get to feel like their choices matter. Another thing that's fun from my game is that I like for my game to be funny sometimes. I won't go into how I make things funny because, one, the whole explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog thing. And two, we're already 2 layers deep into the what makes an adventure blank rabbit hole. And we don't need a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole. It's just rabbits all the way down at that point. Anyways, the reason I like to have a good bit of humor is because it adds a nice contrast to the tone. Some people like these mega grimdark berserk-like settings where it's just all pain and suffering. And some people like to have a setting where they can just stick their feet in the kiddie pool with a beer in the front yard and shoot the shit with the boys. Personally, I like to be kind of in the middle of that spectrum. The humor and the serious parts really complement and contrast each other. The serious parts can give the setting a kind of weight and gravity, so that when there's humor, that bit of levity can bring the levels back down, and in turn, make the serious moments feel like,
oh shit, we need to focus up now.
The last point of fun I'll mention, though these aren't the only ways my group has fun, is that I like to give my players a lot of opportunities to show off what their characters can do. The players pick the class that they play because they want to do the things that that class can do.
No shit.
So giving them those opportunities is fun. It's fun to do cool shit. Shoot arrows at the monk so they can deflect them. Create some locked doors so the rogue can pick them, or so the barbarian can break them down. Send waves of little goobers for the fighter to carve through. Have the enemies grouped up sometimes so the casters can throw out a big spell to hit them all. Now, obviously, you need to do all of this within reason. If every moment is a hero moment, then no moment is heroic. And as I said in a previous video, sometimes the bad guys are going to use tactics, so don't compromise tactical enemies by making them stupid just so the wizard can dunk on them with a fireball. So basically, try to make the NPCs feel like people instead of just things for the party to interact with. Establish a mood or tone for the adventure, or even the campaign as a whole, that everyone at the table wants to explore and immerse themselves in. And also, give the players a chance to show off what their characters can do. And if you can find a way to tie all of those into the adventure or the story, even better. Let's say you're watching a horror movie. When it's time for a scary part, big text doesn't just appear on the screen saying,
"You're scared now. Ooh, be scared. Are you scared yet? Please be scared."
No. They craft the story and the scenes in a way that elicits a scared reaction from you. The good ones don't force it. It has to be earned. So in that same vein, you can't just go into a session demanding that everyone will have fun with the things you prepared. You can have all the right parts and pieces set up, but the adventure won't be enjoyable if you fumble it. Sometimes the scary movie isn't scary. Why? Because they didn't execute the idea well. A lot of the time, execution can be more important than the idea itself. A lame idea that's executed very well is usually going to be more enjoyable than a great idea that's poorly executed. The 2008 Iron Man movie didn't even have a complete script when they started shooting. They had most of the story and action plotted out, but almost no dialogue. The actors improvised most of their lines, and would even rewrite things the day of shooting. The director, the actors, anyone writing or rewriting scenes, and the editors really pulled their weight to make a great movie even with the lack of one of the usually most important things for a movie. I'd consider that more sketchy planning than a lame idea, but either way, that's an example of how the execution of something can make or break it. A different movie with a cool premise but bad execution is Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones. The idea of the movie is that there's a plot to assassinate a senator, so the Jedi send Obi-Wan to investigate, and along the way he's uncovering an even deeper conspiracy about some clone army that another Jedi ordered. Meanwhile, the literal Chosen One has been assigned as a bodyguard to this senator, and there's this romance subplot where Anakin is being torn between his duty and oath to the Jedi and his love for the senator. And during all of that, Star Wars space stuff is happening with clone troopers, bounty hunters, and lightsaber fights. On paper, that sounds pretty cool, and to be somewhat fair, it's not completely terrible. There are some really solid scenes and plots in there. The problem is that some of the other scenes feel kind of contrived, and man, oh man, some of the dialogue is just... Attack of the Clones was not what it could have been. It had the bones of a cool story, but in the end, enough mistakes and bad choices left a lot of people disappointed. I'm saying all of this because you can still have fun with a bare-bones adventure if you know what you're doing and have the right group to play with, like the 2008 Iron Man. And if you have a highly detailed and well-prepared adventure like Attack of the Clones, but you force some of the plots to just happen and make the NPCs say some of the most cringeworthy lines imaginable, that's probably not going to be enjoyable. So how do you learn to execute an idea well? To be honest, it's kind of a learned skill. The more games you run, the more you'll get a feel for what does and doesn't work for you. Even more so if you play with a consistent group. Some people can DM and improvise by the seat of their pants with very few preparations. Others like to prepare tons of details and make a lot of notes. Both of those are perfectly valid ways of DMing and have their own pros and cons. You'll figure out which style works better for you as you get more experience running the game. So, what makes a good adventure? In my opinion, lots of things. Sometimes it's the people you play with. Other times it's by having cool moments for the players. Maybe the NPCs are layered and nuanced characters. Or maybe the world and the setting are enticing enough to be worth exploring. Once you have any combination of those, as long as you don't pull an Attack of the Clones, everyone at the table will probably have a fun time. Thanks for watching.